He is now from North Bengal University, Department of Sociology, and he is now deliver his lecture on social demography and unfinished projects. Please, sir, come and.
I need one clarification, whether there will be question or session after my presentation, because accordingly I will manage time.
Sir, actually, it's up to you, sir. If you want to
No,
take
it
question.
can't be up to me. It should be up to the
No, sir.
organizers.
No, sir. It's okay, sir. You are very
No,
humble, sir.
I thought yesterday there was a bit of confusion about keynote speeches and whether there should be question or session after the lecture is delivered. Now, accordingly, I manage time. This is practical. Be humble, you know. You don't have to be shy, you know. I can conclude my speech within half an hour. Then you can invite questions.
Okay, sir. Okay. Now, actually, sir, I want to give clarification before that. Yesterday, actually, as far as keynote speaker Manul sir concerned, actually, we have take the permission of sir that we can take the question. Then, sir, give us the permission. That's why we proceed. We know the protocol. That's the keynote speaker never take the question. But
No, I'll be glad to take questions.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Because I didn't know that it's going to be a keynote speech. I thought it's a normal lecture. Nobody told me that it's a keynote speech. Anyway, I'll take questions, okay? I'll keep my presentation brief and I'll take questions. I'll pray for that. Okay, this is a clarification. So at the outset, I'd thank the organizers of this webinar. My presentation would be on social democracy in India, an unfinished project. Now, I'm sure you are familiar with the term social democracy. Still, with the risk of repetition, I would highlight some of the key features of social democracy. Now, social democracy is a third way of governance. It combines, it's neither capitalist nor socialist, yet it combines the best elements of both the social orders. It's less exploitative and more humanist kind of project, and which speaks about reconciliation of class interests. Now it combines the modernist ideals based on the universal principles like true devolution to the people, liberty, equality, justice for all, secularism, pluralism, actual power to the people, strong public sphere, guaranteed fundamental rights, universal fraternity, accommodation of social classes, special protection for the minority and the weaker sections of the society, good governance, which would be free of corruption. A strong public sphere is one of the key elements of social democracy. And there has to be a very vibrant civil society, without which you can't imagine a proper democracy. Now, if we look at the global scenario, social democracy became a kind of pragmatic politics in the whole of Europe in the post-Second World War period. And today's idea of social democracy has expanded a bit to accommodate gender equality and also protection of environment. Because if you look at Europe, you'll see that most of the countries have a green party and they propagate sustainable development and protection of the environment. The Nordic countries in particular, namely Denmark, Finland, Sweden, and Norway, have been following social democracy for long, and there has been a broad-based social consensus among all the parties and among all the stakeholders about some fundamental principles of social democracy, which I have highlighted. Now, as a result of strict adherence to the basic principles of social democracy, hello? 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 Can anyone respond, please? Because I'm not sure I'm still connected. Hello?
Sir, you are audible. There is
Okay.
someone who mistakenly started presenting his screen, but it has
Oh,
been sorted now. You are
okay.
audible, sir.
Okay, I got nervous. I'm not technology savvy, so please forgive me for that. Now, the key to the governance in all these 4 countries I have just named is a jagged adherence to the principle of equality. Not in absolute term, but they just adore the principle of equality and hate inequality of all forms. And that precisely explains why people in these countries, are happy with the system they have. Globally, some organization publishes happiness index, and these countries figure on top of the order. Now, in political philosophy, there is a strong tradition that side with the idea of social democracy. I can only name a few without going into elaborate discussion here, like Jacques Rousseau. You are familiar with his book, General Will. Thomas Paine, who was again, like Rousseau, an ideologue of French Revolution. Then Alexis de Tocqueville, Jürgen Habermas. They actually propagate social democracy in one form or the other. Even Karl Marx, you would remember that he lauded the idea of bourgeois democracy. He welcomed, actually, and he took it as a kind of prelude to proletarian revolution in Europe in particular. Now, a section of economists, our own Indian economists, the kind of ideals they are propagating also come very close to social democracy. You read the ideas of Amartya Sen, Jean Dressy, Abhijit Banerjee, Pranab Bardhan, and they directly or indirectly talk about social democracy. Now, why I'm taking up this idea of social democracy? Because when India earned its independence in 1947, everybody thought that we are going to build a social democracy. And that was articulated in the preamble of the Indian Constitution. Now, it's vastly read in schools these days, but it has become so relevant today because the attack is, versatile now. Still, I'd read some of the principles of our democracy, which are enshrined in the preamble of the Indian Constitution. It reads, quote, "We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to the Constitution to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, and political, liberty of thought, expression and belief, faith and worship, equality of the status and of the opportunity, and also fraternity." I'm not quoting anymore. Now, these are the ideals that stand at the core of Indian democracy, and it is to my understanding, Indian Constitution is a social democratic document. And that was clarified by the architect of the Indian Constitution, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Now, when after the conclusion of the first Constituent Assembly in India in 1949, B.R. Ambedkar delivered a long speech spelling out his ideas of the kind of democracy that they actually proposed to bring about in India. And he also highlighted the problems in building a social democracy in India. Now, I'll just refer to some of the key arguments that Ambedkar highlighted in his speech. He said that we must make our political democracy a social democracy as well. And political democracy cannot last unless there lies at the base of it social democracy. So this is a key statement that has to be understood in its context. He explained the importance and the interconnection between the three ideals, three fundamental principles of Indian Constitution, that is liberty, equality, and fraternity. He called it a union of trinity because one cannot be possible without the other. To quote him, without equality, liberty would produce the supremacy of the few over many. Equality without liberty would kill individual initiative. Without fraternity, liberty and equality would not become a natural course of things. Now, he also explained that you need economic inequality to make sure there is social and political equality in India. And without equality, he said, the democracy is simply not possible. I'm quoting a small paragraph from his speech. It goes like this, quote, on the social plane, we have in India a society based on the principle of graded inequality, which means elevation for some and degradation for others. On the economic plane, we have a society in which there are some who have immense wealth as against many who live in abject poverty. On 26th of January 1950, we are going to enter into a life of contradictions. In politics, we will have equality, and in social and economic life, we will have inequality. In politics, we will be recognizing the principle of one man, one vote, one vote, and one vote, one value. In our social and economic life, we shall, by reason of our social and economic structure, continue to deny the principle of one man, one value. We must remove this contradiction at the earliest possible moment, or else those who suffer from inequality will blow up the structure of political democracy, which this assembly has so laboriously built up. Now, the two key points is to the thrust of the argument here is, unless we address inequality, there can be a people's uprising and people will destroy the system. And that was a kind of caution. He also highlighted the importance of fraternity. Fraternity for him means a sense of common brotherhood of all Indians, because that will guarantee unity and solidarity in social life. Now, he also dealt with the question whether India constitutes a nation. He said India is not a nation. because it's so fragmented along caste line. So unless we address the caste divide, which is so fundamental and so strong, there cannot be a sense of unity among the Indians. He said that even in USA, it's so easy to build a nation, but not in India. Now, as you see, if you look back, he explained the ideals of the fundamental principles of Indian democracy. And at the same time, he cautioned us about the probable problems of building a social democracy in India. Not only Ambedkar, but all the great leaders that India had produced in the course of freedom struggle, like Mahatma Gandhi, Nehru, Lohia, Joy Prakash Narayan, and even later, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, then Vinoba Bhave, Acharya Kripalani. So all those statesmen, they stood for a kind of proper, true democracy. Gandhi was in favor of Gram Swaraj, and he was in favor of dismantling party, the Indian National Congress. And he said that, although in a different sense from Karl Marx, said that state is essentially a means to oppression. So we do not need state. Anyway, some of his ideals were too idealistic and not to be put in practice. So that is the case. Nehru, the first prime minister, he was educated in England, and he came under the influence of Fabian socialism. And there is a long debate whether Nehru was socialist or a capitalist. And he lauded the ideals of equality, fraternity, then liberty, all those ideals of modernity that came of French Revolution and Western kind of democratic movements. But sadly, when it came to political praxis, Nehru sided with the landed gentry and the capitalists. So that was the first subversion, right in the hands of Jawaharlal Nehru, of the ideals of Indian democracy and to build a kind of equitable society. But later on, Congress followed the steps of Jawaharlal Nehru. Indira Gandhi stuck to the ideals of democracy, and she was the one who inducted the principle of socialism in the preamble of through 42nd Constitution Amendment. We all know that, but Congress has suffered from internal contradiction, whether to side with the capitalist and the landed gentry, or to side with the common people, the impoverished, the exploited. And because of this contradiction, I would call it a subversion from within, that we fail to build a proper social democratic government. Aberration of two forms, I would say, therefore. One, at the hands of Indian National Congress. Some of the points I have already highlighted, but it was primarily with the introduction of crony capitalism by Rajiv Gandhi in the late 80s, and particularly with the structural reform program in early 90s, that there was a beginning, there was a neoliberal shift, I would say, of the Indian democracy. So from, I would say, soft liberal democracy towards an aggressive neoliberal shift, I would say, where the importance of the state was devalued, minimized, and a greater space was granted to the private capital. And private capital, if it is granted space, it can be so aggressive because it will look for profit in every nook and corner of the society. And that has that was the beginning of a new scale of dividing society, I'd say. The inequality started growing. after the structural reforms program. And there was another shift which I'll talk about at length, that is in the hands of the current political party at the center. They are giving another twist to Indian democracy. It's a nationalist twist. So it's a combination of Hindu nationalism and neoliberalism. So that is a very dangerous trend I see, and it spells the death knell for the ideals of social democracy. It's again a sabotage from within, I would say. Now, what are the highlights of the new governmentality at the hands of the current political dispensation, the party in power? Now, first of all, you would see that the ideals that are there in the Indian Constitution are being systematically denigrated. And you would be shocked to note that recently there has been a case filed in the Supreme Court to drop the ideals from the preamble of the Indian Constitution. Two key ideals. One is socialism, other is secularism from the Indian Constitution. So that is a dangerous trend. It hints at how the political party in power thinks about what would be their approach to Indian democracy. Then the institutions are being systematically devalued. There one can notice encroachment everywhere, political intervention everywhere. The institutions that were supposed to be autonomous are being intruded into, like the universities, research institutes, judiciary, banks, Reserve Bank in particular, the probing bodies like CBI and all, even the court, which is supposed to be an independent institution, are being controlled by the political forces in power. So that is a dangerous trend, I think, for Indian democracy. The principle of equality has been sacrificed or being sacrificed in a big scale. One has to just look at the report of the Oxfam International. It says that because of this path of development that we are following since liberalization, the gap between rich and the poor has widened to a dangerous scale. Like it says that top 10% of the Indian population holds 77% of the total wealth. 73% of wealth generated in 2017 went to the richest 1%, while 67 million Indians who comprise the poorest half of the population saw only 1% increase in their wealth. So there can be further elaboration of how inequality is widening in India. Now, I would say that aggressive privatization of education, health, and PSUs, public sector units, is contributing to widening of inequality, economic inequality in India in a big way. Because you would see that more than 95% of the Indian workers are in the informal sector. Informal sector means the people who are badly paid, who do not have any job guarantee, and they are heavily exploited. And they essentially constitute the poor people. And the crony capitalism that has come in a big way. Crony capitalism means when the power hierarchy and the industry, the capitalists, work hand in hand. They work for each other's benefit. You would remember that C. Wright Mills wrote a book called Power Elite long back in the 60s probably, where he talked about the cocoon, that is constituted of the three types of elites in the USA: the political elite, the business elite, and the military elite. And they centralize power and dictate terms to the majority of the population. So they can distort democracy. Now in India, what is happening is that because of this liberalization, you would notice that great deal of scams are coming up. Scams mean what? The private capital. One is, for example, the Rafael deal, which was talked about. Then the loan waiver, for example, of thousands and lakhs of crores of rupees. Public money deposited in bank, they are being borrowed by the capitalists, and the government all of a sudden is waiving all those loans. And there are loan defaulters, like a big capital taking loan from bank, and then they don't bother to return the money to the bank. And after some time, when it is reported in public, when it comes in the public space, they just flee the country with the help of the people in power, and they're never brought to book. And that clearly speaks of a nexus between the capitalists and the people in power. Now, why the political people help the capitalists? Because they are the ones who contribute to the party fund in a big way. Because you would notice that the party fund, the huge, I don't know how much it's there, but it's a huge amount, and that comes from direct donations from the industries, and 95% of the donation goes to the BJP fund, and they utilize this fund to mutilate the democratic values and principles. You would see how money is spent on buying MLAs, even when the party is not in a majority. Recently, it has happened in Madhya Pradesh. Earlier, it happened in Karnataka. Then they attempted it in Rajasthan also, but failed, it seems. But whole of northeastern states, where BJP was a minority, 1 or 2 MLAs, even there they have constituted the power, the government, because of this exchange of money power. So that clearly speaks about the nexus between the political party and the capitalists. One would see that it is a declared agenda of the BJP that they want to make India a Hindu nationalist country, Hindu nation rather. As a result, you would see a whole lot of programs and policies and jumlas, means slogans, that are declared from time to time that speak about their mindset. Like slogan like Make in India, slogan like Atmanirbhar Bharat, slogan like anti-China rhetorics. This arouse a kind of sentiment, a nationalist, ultra-rightist kind of sentiment. Then at the same time, they openly welcome FDI, foreign direct investment. Then they directly speak about integration with the global capital. So it's a contradiction in itself. And there is enough elements to confuse the common people. India under the BJP rule is full of atrocities, the cases of atrocities against the minorities and the weaker sections, the Dalits as well, and the women as well. And they celebrate it. They lynch some members of the minority communities in public, and the criminals go unpunished. The rapists go unpunished in India. The lynching go unpunished in India. And that speaks about the nexus between the hooligans and the people in power. The government has resorted to disenfranchisement of workers through labor reforms in recent years. Like they are made in some states, they are being made to work for 12 hours a day, and the right to hire and fire has already been granted to the employers, and the minimum wage guarantee has been waived. So all these measures actually weaken the toiling masses. Then the media has been colonized. You won't pick up a single media house that works independently. Now, this is primarily because the owners of these media houses are capitalists who have close connection with the government. So media today, play a significant role in influencing public opinion. Then the government and the leaders promote pre-science beliefs. So Nehruji had this vision of, promoting scientific spirit. But what we see today is that the leaders promote the beliefs in the name of knowledge. One example could be like the Prime Minister said a couple of years back, like Lord Ganesh is a supreme example of how surgery, was developed in ancient time in India. This kind of propagation leads to, I would say, promotion of pre-science, I'd say. Then there are attempts to destroy the pluralist cultural tradition of India, like slogans like one nation, one language, one identity, then uniform civil code. These are the slogans and the measures that are out to kill the plurality which we boast of. And if you sort of look at how the mainstream social scientists have spoken about it, I think most of them talk about the fact that the pluralism, the